Anybody can stand in the sun. That's easy to do. But where do you stand when the lightning strikes and the thunder rolls and the torrential rain comes down? Where are you there? That's where life really tries us. Think how weak we would be, Byron, if every day we woke up with birds singing and flowers blooming and sun shining and 68 or 72 degrees. We'd be like marshmallows.
Mid-South Viewpoint, a Christian news and information feature of Bott Radio Network 640 AM, discussing the news, views, issues, and concerns that affect our community. Join us now for today's edition of Mid-South Viewpoint.
Hi, and welcome to Mid-South Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler, glad to have you along on this afternoon. Today, we're going to talk with the Honorable Memphis Mayor AC Wharton. Mayor Wharton, welcome to Bott Radio Network.
Byron, thanks for having me. I sure appreciate it.
We're on the phone with you right now because you have been on a whirlwind tour through our media in the city, talking about something that's coming up this weekend. You are calling Memphians to Be the Dream, a weekend of reflection, service to honor Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy.
Yes, we are, and this will be a first in which the city of Memphis has actually taken the lead in keeping alive those things that Dr. King lived and died for ultimately here in our great city. It's one thing to talk about it, to write about it. It's another thing to be the dream, to live out that dream in the way we serve others and serve our community. And this is how we're theming it, and this is what it's going to be. Sure, there will be speeches and all, but it'll be just as much focus on action, to be the dream, not really talk about the dream.
Yeah, Mayor, and also to highlight the positive things that are happening in our city, because we've got a great city. I know we get sometimes attention on national media about crime or the city being bad for certain reasons, but I'm telling you, I love Memphis. I was born here. I went to school here. I'm just a fan of the city of Memphis, and I think that there's some great things happening in our city.
Listen, I wasn't born here, but this is home. I love this place. My family does, too. But you're absolutely right in terms of what is going on here. You know, I often say, as Sean Penn said, if you'll recall, as he was on his way to the death penalty in Dead Man Walking, and just before he entered the chamber, the sister asked him, is anything last that you'd like to say? And he said, yes, never judge a man on the worst day of his life. Unfortunately, we tend to judge our city on the first 10 minutes of the 10 o'clock news, in which all of the bad things are blasted into our homes. It's the last thing that we hear before we go to bed. Can't sleep, wake up grouchy the next morning. But take that 10 minutes out and look at what happened in the other hours of the day.
You know, I've always said I think it would be a great newscast if the local media would say, hey, we're going to spend this half hour and talk about all the great things. We're not going to talk about any negative thing that's happening in the city today. We just want to focus on the good things, Just give us a booster shot of encouragement to those that live in our city.
We need that. We need that because for every ill thing that happens, every evil thing that happens, I can show you hundreds of good things that happen. I mean, today, weather-wise, one of the most beautiful days. Now, tomorrow morning, you won't hear people talking about how beautiful it was. They will talk about some horrible crime that they saw on TV just before they went to bed. So we really need that. And it's not a matter of denying reality. It's simply being balanced. We know there are bad things going on, but give as much attention to the good as you do to the bad.
Mayor, you were born and raised in Lebanon, Tennessee, as you mentioned. You weren't raised in the city. Now, growing up, what were your dreams? And did you have particular obstacles or circumstances in your life at that time that could have discouraged you from following your dream?
Oh, listen, there were so many things. You felt kind of silly dreaming because I, as a young black boy growing up, in Wilson County, Tennessee, in which the tradition among black families was that if you happen to have older sisters, they might go off to college, they might finish high school, but it fell the lot of the oldest boy to kind of stick around home and help Daddy out. And that is what I wanted to do. I loved and admired my daddy, and my dream was to stay there in Lebanon, Tennessee, and to help my daddy dig post holes and load cattle and cut weeds and just to be like my daddy. And I never regret wanting to be like my daddy, but it just didn't make sense to dream. As a matter of fact, I did not really decide to apply for college until I guess it was my senior year, because my dream was to get a job in a local plant there that had moved down from the north. They may have been paying $1 an hour, which was really rich at that time. And there was just no reason to dream. There was no reason to dream. I felt there was just not a chance at all that my dreams would come true, so you didn't want to make yourself look stupid by dreaming.
Talk about your dad. Obviously a hard-working man, so you learned the value of hard work through your dad.
Absolutely. My dad had about a third-grade education. His father died early, and my dad, being the oldest boy, had to stop and take care of his mother and the younger children. But you know what? He was a very faithful man, church leader, and my father owned more in terms of real estate and did more in terms of business than I'll ever do. He never wasted anything. He never begged for anything. He was just immensely charitable, just a real role model. And we have a little grocery store now that's leased out, Wharton's Grocery in Lebanon, that my mom and dad bought. They managed to get us off to law school and send all of us to college. Law school in my case, med school in my brother's case, college, grad school in my sister's case. So a humble, not formally educated man, but he was a brilliant man.
Well, you just spoke on a couple of key things there. It's not necessarily education or a wealth of an individual. It really develops and makes the character of a person, Mayor.
You're absolutely right. My daddy wasn't much on preaching and proselytizing but he lived out. He lived out what Christianity was all about. He just didn't say much. But if he saw a person in hunger, I dare say that we could have been wealthy people if all the folks who came into Wharton's Grocery and charged up food and never paid us were to come back. But that never deterred him. If you were hungry and you needed food for your family, if you walked into that Wharton's Grocery, you were going to walk out of there with meat and potatoes and a loaf of bread. Hopefully you would pay. Many times folks did not pay, but my daddy never became embittered. He never did. He just kept on giving and giving and giving. If you needed a ride to town, we were the few people who had transportation. He would do that. If you needed a loan, he would do that. Actually, let me say this. My actual name is AC. That's why there are no periods there. Well, that was his name. After I got to law school, I was working on some abbreviations, and I happened to look in the law dictionary, and I saw AC. And in earlier times, AC stood for a Christian. Now, whether that's what my grandparents had in mind when they named him that, I do not know. But I tell you what, my dad lived out. He was the essence of Christianity in everything that he did.
He was a walker, not just a talker.
Absolutely. As I always say, most people would rather see a sermon any day than to hear one. And when you saw my daddy, you saw a sermon.
And Mayor, that's really the heartbreak in today's city, our city right here in Memphis, and of course across the nation, where we don't see that character. Dysfunctional homes, the breakdown of the home, having that leadership in the home despite adverse circumstances, that our young people can see there's that mentor, somebody that they can strive to be like. You wanted to be like your daddy.
Absolutely. Our children have to have positive role models. You can read, you can give them TV, you can give them all this stuff, but if they don't see somebody living out in real flesh and blood that which we're telling them they ought to live out, it's extremely difficult for them. Anybody can write something on a piece of paper and say, here are the rules, but it takes a real person to say, here are the rules, and I'm going to live out the rules so you'll know how to live out the rules. I recall one day asking my dad, I said, Dad, when are you going to teach me how to drive? Because he had never just stopped and said, okay, get over here and let me show you this. And he was a man of few words. He said, I'm already teaching you. And I said, what? He said, all you have to do is just look at me every time you get in here. I'm teaching you how to drive. Well, I hadn't thought of it that way, and I hadn't been paying attention. And that's the way we learn. We do not learn and form our lives based solely on what folks tell us. We are impressionable as young folks, and we like to imitate. That's how we learn. If you see bad things, you're going to imitate bad things, and it's going to stick with you. Role model is critical.
Was it when you got into college that you aspired to follow a different dream instead of staying on the farm? You said you applied in high school for college.
Well, let me tell you, it was amazing. I told you earlier that boys just really did not go to college out of Wilson County, black boys. But for the first time, Lebanon received 2 male student teachers. It used to be all women. I remember distinctly one day sitting in the library. My dad had given me an assignment to pay some bills after school. I probably, and this was almost like having $1,000 or $2,000 in your pocket, I probably had $75 or $100, and I was counting it and putting little notes on to pay this to the light company, pay this to the tobacco company, or whatever. And so the student teacher said, "What are you doing with that?" And I said, "I'm paying the bills for my dad. It's for the store here." And they said, "What are you going to do? Where are you going to college?" And I said, "Well, I'm not going to college. I'm going to get a job at Ross Gear and Tool." And they said, no. And they just stepped in, and they brought some college applications to me, encouraged me. So it was at junior or senior year of college that I saw there is a role in higher education in college for black men, because they were near my age, of course. And I said, maybe I ought to give this thing a shot. So true to my rural background, I wanted to become a veterinarian. I applied to Tuskegee Institute, which was the only school of veterinary medicine in this area in the South that would admit black students. It was a black school, of course. Tuskegee Airmen, of course, were based there. But unfortunately, I needed $600, I believe. Did not have that. So I wasn't able to get there, but my high school principal came and gave me a scholarship to Tennessee State University and took him up on that. As they say, the rest is history. But there's a lesson in that. And whenever I make motivational speeches to children, I have a thing called the 5 good D's, as in dog or David. You've got dream, you have to desire, you have to have drive, you have to have determination, and you have to be willing to take the detours in life. I dreamed, I had the drive, I had the determination, but I had to take a detour. I didn't get to go to Tuskegee, but to went to Tennessee State. And that's the story. That's a lesson for all of us. You will not always, and I say this when I speak to children, if you want to go to UT, that's fine. But if you can't go to UT, go to Southwest. Go somewhere, and don't become deterred because you don't get your school of choice.
I think it's those detours we do have the most difficult with. They don't go our way. We've got to learn to be flexible in life.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's just no way in the world, and for most of us, that we're going to be able to just follow a defined course, never have to veer from it. There are going to be detours in life. Go ahead and get ready for that. And just, if by happenstance you don't have a detour, then fine. It's just like having a spare tire in the trunk of your car. You hope you'll never have to use it, but you feel much better knowing it's there even if you don't. So prepare yourself to have to take a detour in life. You may have to drop out a semester, but just keep that goal in mind. Keep your eye on the prize. Be prepared to take a detour every once in a while. When I'm talking to little children in schools, I'll ask them, do you ever go on a church trip somewhere? Yes. And do you ever come up on something sitting out in the highway saying, stop, do not enter? Yes. Does a bus driver turn around and say the trip is over and just bring you back home? No. I said, what does he do? And I say, it starts with a D. And they'll say, detour. Sometimes they'll say danger, but either way, you got to be prepared.
That's right.
So it's just that lesson in life. Be prepared to take the detour.
Mayor Wharton, what do you remember most about Dr. King and the legacy he left for all of us?
That really nothing is without pain and suffering and sacrifice. While it's good to remember him at his speech on the March on Washington, as I do, but I remember just vividly reading his letters from a Birmingham jail. Sometimes we focus too much on the glory, which is fine, but we need to focus as much on the pain and the suffering, because anything worthwhile is going to have some pain and suffering, and we have to be able to bear that also. Anybody can stand in the sun. That's easy to do. But where do you stand when the lightning strikes and the thunder rolls and the torrential rain comes down? Where are you there? That's where life really tries us. Think how weak we would be, Byron, if every day we woke up with birds singing and flowers blooming and sun shining and 68 or 72 degrees. We'd be like marshmallows. I mean, we would just be wobbly and weak. So I tend to remember both vividly when he was stabbed in Harlem and things like that he persevered. When he knew that he was being spied upon and had every reason to become vindictive and mean and hate America. But instead of that, he just plowed on. Those are the things that I remember.
Growing up, too, as a young black boy in Lebanon, you were treated sometimes not favorably because of the color of your skin. Do you remember those times? And how did you find strength and encouragement to go through that? Really persecution.
Well, that's really a difficult question. There was a certain amount of brainwashing which always have to occur when people are victimized by discrimination. When the law enforcement tells you that this is your place, when the sign on the restaurant door tells you this is your place, when the water fountains in the very place of justice, the courthouse, when the water fountain tells you that there's some cold hot water down there, not a chilled fountain, somehow it just plays a mind game on you. And while there's discrimination just slapping you all in the face, you don't have that acute awareness of it. You don't put a label on it. But you do, and it hurts. I never will forget once I was working as a shoe shine boy in a barber shop. It was a white barber shop. And I saw the barber and some folks gathering up in the front of the barber shop where I couldn't hear them. So finally one of them came back to me and said, "Boy, go next door to the Maple restaurant and get me a hamburger. And don't fool around. I want you to hurry and get back here. Don't you go around that back door. You go right up and go in that front door." Well, they knew the proprietor was going to just wear me out. Keep in mind, I had a white man telling me to go next door and go in that front door. And I walked in there. Tables were full. I'll never forget the day. I got about halfway the floor in there. I saw that lady come out from behind that counter, and she used the N-word and said, "If you don't get your butt out of here," it felt like I was putting a dog who had bolted into the church house in the middle of the sermon. Things like that are indelibly impressed upon you. But, when you got home, I was blessed with a good mom and a good dad and a good family who told me I was something and I was rich and I was going to be this. Yes. And that's the only way you made it. We were somewhat anesthetized because it was so oppressive. It was everywhere. And then I had a good family that wrapped a blanket around me when those things happened to me. But it was so degrading. And, Byron, I will never rationalize or justify a crime or anything illegal. But, there comes a point in time in which people can be subjected to so much hurt and pain that they just reject the values of the society and they feel that the rules of law don't apply to them. Mm-hmm. In other words, just as a dog can't read a stop sign, which is the law, the stop sign is, well, if I'm going to be treated like a dog, why should I just look at all these laws that these other people talk about? Because I'm not one of them. I'm like a dog. I'm a beast. I'm not a man. And there's nothing in the code, a law that tells dogs what to do. It's all directed to men. And since I'm not a man, I'm a dog, I'm an animal, I'm a beast, so why should I pay any mind to these laws? And that's why discrimination against any group for any reason is just horrible and pernicious and destructive to mankind in general.
Well, I can thank God that we've come a long way from those days, Mayor. We've got more room to grow, I know. What particular ways have you seen Dr. King's dream come alive in our city, where we are today?
Oh, sure. I mean, if you go back to his speech at the March on Washington, there's more and more of a tendency in practice to judge people on the content of their character as opposed to the color of their skin. I know it's fashionable sometimes to say, oh, America's still a racist nation, nothing has changed. That's simply not true. Things have changed, and a lot of that came from Dr. King's willingness to not try to use brute force to bring that change about, to appeal to the Christianity, to the moral sector of us all. And I think we have made sure the laws had to be changed. The courts had to enforce the laws and interpret the laws justly. But I think we've made just as much progress because Dr. King appealed to that better person that's deep down inside all of us.
What about some particular ways you're seeing the citizens of Memphis be the dream? We are seeing people be the dream.
Oh, if you look at what we're doing for the homeless here, we have a model program here. If you look at what MIFE, if you're looking at Meals on Wheels, if you're looking at just everywhere where people on an organized basis are reaching out and making it a part of the fabric of this community to reach out and touch and care for the less fortunate, to visit those, and I'm a former public defender, and you go out to that correctional center on weekends and at night, and you will see people from our various churches visiting, going behind the cells there, behind the walls, ministering to people behind the walls, things that Christ told us to do. We're feeding the hungry, we're clothing the naked, and we're visiting those when they're in prison. Things are changing, and we're doing that without regard to race, creed, or color.
Mayor, I know one of your favorite places to eat in town is Barksdale's on Cooper. They've got some great breakfast, especially the gravy and biscuits.
Yeah.
And I saw you in there. It's been a couple of years ago with your son and your grandson. What about the dreams you have for your grandchildren? I'm a grandpa. My granddaughter was born about 11 months ago, my first grandchild. And you start seeing things different as a grandparent.
Absolutely. It was during my campaign. These are my children. This is when I was running for office. I had one of my sons to head up the youth committee. They were in there, had a little phone bank in my house, and they were calling their colleagues. And I was just listening. I would hear them say, who is this? Who is Johnny? And they would say, he went to this school with me. Who is Betty? I met her on this trip. I never did hear them say, Betty's a white girl. I met her on a trip. Johnny is a Hispanic boy, a black boy. I met him there. They were focused on one thing. Could they get some of their friends to support their dad? They didn't have a black list and a white list. They weren't polling based on race. They were just saying, my daddy is a good man and he ought to be county mayor. And it was just so beautiful because I'd go in regular campaign rooms and I would say, how's the mayor polling in the black community? How's the mayor? And these kids, that new day, all they wanted is to get their friends, brown, black, or white, girl, boy, to say, my dad is a good man. And I see it now playing through with my grandchildren. When I ask them, who are your friends, I'll ask them all the time, who do you sit next to? And they'll say Byron or Bobby or whomever, but they'll never say, I sit next to a little Hispanic boy. It's just kids. We just turn it over to them, Byron, we'd be in a doggone good place in this world.
Oh, we would be, Mayor. What's your greatest thrill of being the mayor of Memphis?
It's being able to just tackle these seemingly insurmountable tasks and yet at the same time have the people to keep the faith, to believe in us. That is the greatest task in my mind because I don't have any money to give away. We're out of the day, the time in which we can promise every community, we're going to build this, we're going to do this for you. The greatest thing we can do is to keep hope alive and to keep faith in government and to keep respect for government. And I really, I think it's James, the first chapter, I delight in trials. I come in here every morning knowing that I have trials and tribulations, but boy, at the end of the day, when the sun sets over at mighty Mississippi, which I have the privilege of just overlooking every night, I can say, I hope someone now believes in government because of me. I hope someone who was about to lose faith, lose confidence, has regained that faith and confidence. So the seemingly insurmountable odds that we face financially and crime and everything, but the pleasure I get is just being able to surmount those things and to take others along with me and to restore their faith and confidence in government.
Well, Mayor, in closing, you have a special invitation for all of our listeners on AM 640 and FM 100.7 on Monday, January 20th. The entire community is invited to celebrate Dr. King's birthday at the MLK Commemorative Celebration, which will be held from 9 a.m. until 10:30 a.m. at the historic Mason Temple. And that's where Dr. King delivered his final speech, I've Been to the Mountaintop. Also, the celebration will include the presentation of the 2014 Be the Dream MLK Legacy Awards. Some special folks will be receiving that award. And then following the celebration, all Memphians will be heading out to various service projects across the city to live out the dream.
That is correct. We talk about the dream. Let's be the dream. A very simple word. B-E, just 2 letters. Be the dream. Not preach the dream, but be the dream. And the people, the honorees, the Legacy Awards, Reverend Billy Cowles, we know what he did. Dr. James Nettles, we know what he did. Fred Davis, who was on the city council, insurance executive. Father Don Mowry, Jocelyn Wurzburg, Russell Sugarman, and Beverly Robinson. These were people who are the dream, and we want to honor them while they are living out the dream that Dr. King talked about.
Also, want to mention that Be the Dream MLK Weekend will kick off actually on, I believe it's Friday, with a youth symposium at the Cook Convention Center.
That's on Saturday, January the 18th. It is critical that we reach our young. They were not as blessed as we were to live in Dr. King's time. And some of them is just somebody whose picture they saw on TV or in a book or on the internet or whatever. So we want to focus them. You see, our concern is that if we're not vigilant, the discrimination of the past, which was against black folks, could rear its ugly head against Latinos, Hispanics, Asians. So we just want them to get involved and to find out what it was about and to instill in them that it's their responsibility to be the dream, to speak out against intolerance and a disrespect for diversity. So, and we've got to get it to them while they're young. There's some vicious things on the internet these days that teach hate. So many of these shootings and things that will occur, they go into the kids' home and look at the stuff they find that they had been worshiping almost. So let's capture them while they're young. And that's what this is about. And that will be at the Cook Convention Center. That's on Saturday the 18th from 12 noon to 3 p.m.
All the information is available to our listeners at BeTheDreamMemphis.com. BeTheDreamMemphis.com. You can get all the details for the weekend, the events planned, and we need to be the dream for our city, Mayor.
That is correct. That's a simple request.
Well, thank you for your service to our community. I know you work very long hours. You work hard. I thank you for your love for our city, and it's a real pleasure to have you on Bot Radio today.
And Byron, thanks for giving me so much time. You've been so generous. I want to thank the entire network. Thank you so much.
Friends, that's all the time we have on this edition of Mid-South Viewpoint. I do appreciate you stopping by. I'm Byron Tyler. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Mid-South Viewpoint. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can email us. Our address is wcrv@botradionetwork.com. This has been Mid-South Viewpoint, another Christian news and information feature from Bot Radio Network 640 AM.